A very good morning, everyone. Welcome to StudyIQ English, your favorite UPSC platform in India. Welcome to today's Hindu newspaper analysis, and let's analyze the Hindu newspaper New Delhi edition for today, that's 5th September 2025. Okay, and today's newspaper also is quite a detailed, comprehensive newspaper because we have about 8 articles today to analyze. Just two of them I have picked up from the editorial page, that's page number 8, while the remaining are quite factual. So we shall analyze them from a more prelims perspective actually. Okay, so on that note, let's quickly have a look at today's important news events. And all these are UPSC relevant articles. As I always say, while the editorial articles will provide you rich information for your answers, it is the factual articles, the last three or four, that will be quite factual, that will be map based, places in the news, and hence you can find them useful for the prelims exam. Very good morning, Order, Shaggy. Very good morning, Rishi. Let's have a look at the first article for the day. Yes, this is page number 8, editorial article, the front page article, the editorial main page article. Article says Trump's tariff war is an opportunity for the global south. The title is quite sufficient to tell you that this is GS paper 2 because GS paper 2 is international relations, particularly the Indo-US relations, but also we will talk about India-China relations here, okay? So both ways it is important. Plus, you can also map this to GS paper 3 because we are talking about tariff war, trade deficit, export surplus. All these terms come from economy. Very good morning, Niharika and Nagula. So let's see what's the key issue raked by the article. Now, the article is saying that we all know how Donald Trump led US government has imposed 25 plus 25, that's total 50% tariff on Indian exports. Earlier, the same tariff used to be 2 to 4%. Now, suddenly, this 50% tariff coming as a punishment to India for what's the mistake that we made? We continued our deep relationship with Russia. We continued to import cheaper crude oil from Russia to take care of our energy security. That was the mistake that we have made according to US. US today says that India is responsible for genocide and bloodshed in Ukraine. Therefore, as a punishment, 50% penalty. What was Brazil's mistake? Brazil was hosting the BRICS summit. US feels insecure about BRICS. US feels it's an anti-dollar agenda. So therefore, India and Brazil were experiencing a very high tariff punishment. In that light, many countries today, including China, have agreed that this is nothing but an act of economic warfare. US has not respected the World Trade Organization's convention when it has imposed such an unnecessary tariff on us. And this 50% tariff impacts India's $48 billion exports products. So today, as we are grappling with this new reality, and the government is finding two solutions to it. One, let's become Atmanirbhar, self-sufficient. Second, let's diversify our trade partners. Recently, we have locked in the India-UK Free Trade Agreement. Yesterday, we were talking about Germany-India Free Trade Agreement. Just last week, we have also inked the free trade agreement with countries of Liechtenstein, Switzerland, and all these, Luxembourg. Then, apart from that, India is also recently our Prime Minister was in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Yes, India, China are also planning to solve their differences, border problems, and further promote bilateral trade. All this is being done as a measure to face the impact of tariff. But the article is saying that apart from being a punishment, what if we start viewing this tariff as a great opportunity for the global south countries? Now, we all know ever since the third wave of globalization picked up in the 1990s. Now, we know that globalization is also a very diverse phenomena. It is not a new phenomena, it started long back. Even civilizations like Indus Valley were busy doing trade with Mesopotamia and Egypt. So, which means globalization is not a new thing. But yes, after the 1990s, we are witnessing the fourth and the fifth wave of globalization. This is a more dramatic globalization because it is multifaceted in nature. It is about not just economic but political, cultural integration. And this has also meant that the world has been divided into two areas broadly. One is the global north, the northern hemisphere countries, the rich countries, high GDP, highly industrialized. Yes, it's America. Yes, it's UK, countries of EU. Yes, we talk about some aspects. We talk about Japan. We talk about supreme countries like Russia. And then on the other hand, you have the global south. Global south is a name that's given to those countries which are still developing. You could talk about South America, India, other countries like South Asia. All these countries are still trying to achieve a higher GDP growth. They are still trying to industrialize. Africa could be another example. So these are developing. In the last 30, 40 years, we have seen a huge difference between the global north and the global south. Now, as you're saying, order absolutely, whether it's forums like WTO, whether it's forums like United Nations, International Monetary Fund, across all these forums, if you look closely, the global north has always dominated the agenda. Always. Say, talking about United Nations Security Council. Always the veto power goes to the global north countries. After all, they are rich countries, they are highly industrial countries. In the process, the interest of global south countries who are still developing, whose economies are still immature, they often have to suffer a lot of penalty. Today, the tariff war done by America has again brought the same question in focus. That is it an attack of the global north on the global south? Single-handedly blaming America also may not be very wise, because yesterday we saw how even Germany and United Kingdom said the same thing. The only difference was the tone and the attitude. While Trump and his spokesperson have been extremely critical and insulting when they say that India sponsors Ukraine war and hence India deserves a punishment. The same thing was essentially repeated by United Kingdom and German leader, although in a much softer and in a much polite tone. He said that we do not blame India directly, but at the same time we will continue to impose sanctions on Russia and any such country which imports oil from Russia. And look at the hypocrisy here. It is EU countries who continue to import oil from Russia. It's China who has doubled its imports from Russia. US also imports critical supplies from Russia. But countries like India are being blamed repeatedly. By whom? Not just America, the entire wing of global north. So yes, this tariff war is not just about India US. This tariff war is symbolic of the prolonged exploitation of global south by the much richer, much more authoritative global north. So today this article is saying, why should we see this only as a punishment? Can this not be an opportunity for the countries of the global south to show some unity against the domination and unfair practices of the global north? Now, India, after this huge tariff attack, has also proved that India is a major economy. Our Prime Minister recently said that no matter what tariffs you impose on us, within the next year, India will be the third largest economy in the world. Recently, we also saw our GDP figures. They were about 7.5%, quite higher as compared to last few financial quarters, which means that India has not experienced the kind of damage that America wanted India to. The problem is that this tariff attack just needs us to completely retweak our foreign policy. That's the only challenge we are facing right now. That we, for all these past 10 years, were believing in a very West pro policy. India was one country who used to believe that I am a key ally of US. I am a key ally of Israel. I am a key ally of countries like Japan and Australia. And I'm a key friend of countries from European Union. That was India's belief. And for India, it was also a very happy thing because India was definitely quite cautious of domination of China, unpredictable policies of Russia. So India felt that having a very pro-Western attitude is going to work very well for India. It was proven also. Howdy Modi, Namaste Trump, all these were going on. While Prime Minister Modi's visits were being celebrated in America by the diaspora, Diwali was being celebrated in the White House. India US felt like the best friends ever. But today, after this tariff attack, there is one thing that's very clear, that no matter how much you abuse, no matter how much you criticize the non alignment movement, somewhere that's also the only solution. That's the new realization we are having. Agreed that earlier, non alignment was because we were very weak and poor. Today, non alignment is needed because, yes, we have to make sure that we balance our trade partners. Too much trust in one country will always cause problem. That's the new sentiment. So today the need of the hour is a retweaking of foreign policy agenda. We need to have a poly-crisis attitude. What is poly? Poly means multiple. Crisis is a problem. So let's view this tariff attack as a poly-crisis. It is not just economic, it is also cultural because yes, US is threatening sending back Indian workers. US is threatening cancellation of B2 visas, B1 visas. This crisis is every bit political. This crisis is every bit about the fight between North and South. It's every bit geographical. So, yes, we are facing a poly crisis. But rather than focusing only upon problems, why can't we see this as a new opportunity to unite the countries of global South against the abuse of UN protocols by the global North? US has done whatever it wanted to, and it has gotten away with that. Remember when US simply walked out of the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, that I don't want to follow any international norms. Remember when US attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, Fordow, Natanz, highlighting the fact that yes, Iran has a certain hidden nuclear agenda, and Iran, not being a party to the CTBT or NPT, will do whatever it has to, no matter who said what. US did not say anything. It never listened to anybody. Similarly, today, as the world is saying that the United Nations has declared official famine in Gaza, people, children are dying, and the attack from Israel continues. US doesn't say a word about it. Not one word comes up. Remember when India Pakistan fought over the Pahalgam attack, when India launched the Operation Sindoor, it was about self defense. Did US come and support us? No. Till date, US is saying no, it is I who have done the ceasefire. And both countries were about to go for a nuclear war if US was not coming in between. So that's the agenda of Trump. We all know that America has its own problems. America is having a huge problem like capital accumulation, inflation. America is experiencing job loss, recession, acute economic inequality. So Trump, rather than focusing on these American problems, is doing a whitewash of that problem by playing upon people's insecurity. That we are in a problem because we give jobs to Indian and Chinese. This is like creating a xenophobic sentiment. Xenophobia is a fear of outsiders. Trump is playing upon the xenophobia card, that it's bad to give jobs to Indian and Chinese. Similarly, he's trying to act over protectionist by saying we will not allow trade, we will impose heavy duties on other countries. What is he trying to do? He had imposed tariff on 70 countries, imagine. Initially for China, it was 143%, Brazil 50, India 50. The reason is that by using tariff and by using sanctions, these two tools are the tools that Donald Trump wants to use right now. One is tariff and the other is sanctions. Sanctions on Russia, sanctions on Iran. What's the benefit? He thinks that this is the way to get public sympathy in America. That's all his agenda is. And today, although all these tariffs and sanctions are completely ignoring, as you said, order, forums like WTO, forums like UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNTAD, all these are being undermined. But there is no choice. Nobody has ever said anything to the US. It monopolizes. For example, creating a ban on foreign trade is making other countries vulnerable. Imagine Indian exports to the US, $48 billion, got impacted in one day. Indian exporters lost business in just a matter of few weeks. Who could stop America? Nobody. And today, look at the hypocrisy. US is pressurizing India to open its agriculture and dairy sector for trade with US. At the same time, it has created extremely high tariffs when it comes to US agriculture. So India cannot sell products agriculture products to the US, but US wants to sell agriculture products to us. Can you imagine, while imposing a tariff up to 350% on agriculture imports from India, he expects us to open our agriculture and our dairy sector for free? This doesn't make any sense. Previously, also, India has bowed down in front of US pressure. Long back, it was US because of whom we had stopped importing oil from Venezuela. We had stopped importing oil from Iran. We paid a heavy price for that. We had to buy the Texas oil, the US oil, which is double more expensive as compared to oil from Iran, Venezuela, or Russia. We faced a problem because of that. Similarly, India experienced a complete loss of energy, huge dependence on import, all because we couldn't get these cheap imports because US had said don't get them. So the article is asking, where did we go wrong? Have we made certain diplomatic mistakes? Yes, we have. One lesson is very clear. Next time onwards, India's foreign policy should be a balance when it comes to America's internal politics. Why should Indians believe that Joe Biden is a less supportive president for India, and Trump's coming will mean wonders for India? So when Trump was elected, when he won the election, Indians were celebrating. Look at the backlash today. So rather than supporting either the Republican or the Democratic, it's better to treat America as one nation who may act against us anytime. There is no point of being overtly friendly with any particular leader. There is no point in getting your hands dirty in America's local politics. It makes no sense. Second mistake that we have learned is abandoning the non alignment. Agreed that the Nehruvian non alignment is an obsolete idea today. Today's geopolitical realities are very different from 1960s. But let's understand that if that Nehruvian non alignment was out of compulsion and fear, today's non alignment should be, as our External Affairs Minister Sri Jai Shankar said, India will do what it wants to do. India will do what it likes to do, what is supporting India's own needs. We shall do that. And here we will not bother whether we are supporting US or Russia or China. Anything is okay, provided we benefit. This is the kind of NAM, the NAM point 2, non-alignment movement version 2 is the need of the hour. Okay. So this is an age-old comment, Rishi. So Venezuelan crisis had happened few years back. We are talking about that. Because of our US, we couldn't import oil from that. If you want a separate discussion, I will bring that for you definitely. Absolutely order. Absolutely. That's correct point there. Well said. Okay. So yeah, absolutely. We can talk about de-dollarization also. Yes, that's a big agenda under BRICS as well. Very valid said. Well made point there. So now we need the NAM 2.0 because we understand that today, on the one hand, you have the China-Pakistan axis. That's dangerous. Now look at the confusion here. China-Pakistan axis. China-Pakistan. We all know that China uses Pakistan as an economic colony, as a loan colony. China has a strategy we all know, the string of pearls strategy, the strategy of giving a country loan, investing in its infrastructure, and then later the country becomes completely indebted. And then China starts controlling and monopolizing its economy. China has done that with Pakistan, countries of Africa, Sri Lanka. Even Italy was facing the same problem just a few years back. So China Pakistan axis is dangerous for India given the border issues in concern, safety, security, terrorism. Then again, Pakistan US angle is also there. US has not blamed Pakistan directly for Pahalgam attack. In fact, US said India was more extreme in instigating Pakistan through Operation Sindoor. That's a ruthless thing to say, but we all know that is one angle. Now, third angle here happens to be the China-Russia relationship. Today, I will make a current affair video. If you enjoy that video, do let me know. And I'm going to be talking about the very famous important pipeline that is being created to pass from Russia, China, so that there is no involvement of Europe. It is an anti-Europe move. I'm going to talk about that. So think of the Russia-China economic integration and deep friendship. Look at India's situation now. India cannot neglect US, diaspora, trade. India cannot neglect China. We need to diversify our markets. India cannot neglect Russia, a key friend, a key trade partner. So, and Pakistan, an out and out enemy. So, in this, balancing the foreign policy is a challenge. So, that's why we need a better non-alignment movement, the latest version of non-alignment movement. Okay, so let's understand that supporting US blindly, thinking that US is my support pillar against China, is not going to help. See here, look at the irony that US was ready to reduce China's tariff from 145% to 30%, but for India, not 1% sympathy was shown. Look at the situation. Okay, so now what's the need of the hour? One, let's focus on manufacturing. Let's focus on manufacturing sector. Let's focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat. Second thing, let's focus on high levels of unemployment in India by creating more schemes like vocational schemes, PM Vishwakarma scheme, Skill India mission, Satat scheme, the Semicon mission. All these are important in generating jobs for Indians as such. Then let's look at the stagnant private sector. Let's look at Indian owned private companies. How can we make our tax structure more liberalized for them? Now, today there is another article that talks of GST, the goods and services tax. Everybody in the country is very happy except a few sectors. The government has revised the GST burden. That could be a very good way of encouraging local entrepreneurs. Similarly, we must revitalize our public sector units, invest in them, making sure that strategically, like China has done, we involve our public sector enterprises in higher production and higher service industry. Then it's also time we should create better alliances in global south. We know that global north is unreliable. They dominate, they monopolize. So it's high time let's make better friends with countries like Australia. Then you have Brazil, you have other countries of South America. We have sub-Saharan African countries rich in resources. Of course, we have South Korea, we have Japan. So let's focus on having newer relationships, newer ties right now, so that we can shift away from the domination of global north. And at the same time, the need of the hour is to make such a world system. What's the dream? What's the need for the future? The need for the future is to create such a world economic system that does not discriminate against global south. It is fair to global south, and India, being the third largest economy in the world, can quite contribute to this agenda if India takes it on priority. That was the article, the first article, page 8 editorial. Let's look at the question. According to the analysis of US trade and foreign policy under Trump, consider the following statements. One, the US tariff weaponization against India was partly linked to the benefit over Russia Ukraine conflict. Two, despite maintaining one of the world's highest tariff barriers in the dairy and tobacco sector, US wanted India to completely stop all protection for its agriculture sector. Three, India's foreign policy approach of partial alignment with the US has led to our strong position in immediate neighborhood and reduced our dependence on China. Quite a tricky question. Try to answer. You can post your answers and you can also self-verify from the last slide. All right. Now the next article is again editorial page. It's page number 8. Now this is a good news actually. Doing the GS topic mapping. This is coming from GS paper 3 because we are talking about economic policies, the reform of GST, the amendment of the Goods and Services Act. So today, everyone in the country is quite happy. Absolutely, Shaggy and Rishi, that looks like the valid answer. It is the valid answer. Great job. Well done. Now, talking about this article, this is GS paper 3. As I said, the reform and change in the GST tax structure. The good news for the whole country is that government has announced the new revised goods and services tax. The name is GST 2.0, the second version of GST. Now, GST that was introduced long back in 2017, the goods and services tax. Why was it introduced? To completely remove the complicated and so many indirect taxes in India and replace them with one single tax regime. But unlike other countries who believe in fewer slabs, two slabs or one slab, India adopted a multi-tax slab GST, which means under GST tax, there shall be multiple slabs. For example, India adopted the 5%, the 12%, the 18%, the 28%. All these were the slabs that we were using under our GST structure. But we also realized that there were too many tax evasions. People were having a lot of difficulty in filing their tax returns. Especially entrepreneurs and startups were having problems. And they were also being accused of tax evasion under GST. Similarly, it was difficult to compute. It was causing too much confusion even among states. Hence, today we have introduced a new amendment that's called GST 2.0. The decision was announced in the 56th meeting of GST Council that just happened yesterday and the day before. And the news is wonderful. We have removed the multi-tax structure today. And now we are trying to achieve a simpler, a more transparent, and a more modern day tax system. So we have completely merged the earlier existing 12 and 18, the 28% tax slabs. Now, compliance burden was too much on people. So now what is happening? We have clearly three things to look at. One interesting thing that has happened is that government is saying that now 5% slab will be the merit rate. The merit rate applies to essential services, goods of mass consumption. So we are talking about essential plus mass consumption goods. The second rate is going to be your 18%. Under the 18%, we will include only majority of goods and services. This is a standard rate that India will use now. This should be the standard rate, while the first one is just for essential supplies, so that consumers have purchasing power to buy them. Festival season is also coming. Second is the standard rate that will be applicable across majority of goods and services in India. And the third is going to be the 40%. Now this 40% will be about demerit tax. The 5% is merit, this is demerit tax structure, demerit tax rate. Here we are including only luxury goods, luxury cars, we are including alcohol, we are including tobacco. These are also called as sin goods, S-I-N, sin goods, okay? So 40% will be about these things, about only tobacco, alcohol, luxury products, higher end consumer products, all these. So these are luxury plus sin goods. Yes, absolutely. So that earlier structure, which has 0%, 5%, 12%, 18, 28% has now gone. Under the new 56th meeting of the GST Council, we have completely changed that into a simpler structure. So now we don't have these many slabs, we just have 3 standard slabs. As I said, 5% merit rate, merit tax rate, only on essential goods and commodities and services. Second, 18% standardized rate on a majority of goods and services. And the last is 40%. That's just reserved for luxury and thin goods. High-end luxury cars, consumer products, white goods, tobacco, alcohol, all of that. Plus, this will also make India more aligned. This will make India globally aligned with other advanced countries of the world. Another thing that's going to happen is that today there has been a huge relief. The government has given a huge help to whom? To households and consumers. So at the micro level, the 5% rate that I spoke about, the merit rate, it will include products like soap, shampoo, daily use products for people. For example, chapati, flour, all these things will be either absolutely free, exempted from any GST, and the more expensive ones could come under the 5% slab. Soap, shampoo, kitchenware, bicycles, all that is the merit list. Now, talking about which are completely exempted, there are some goods in which the government will not now put any tax. Very happy news for Indian customers. These are going to be, for example, chapatis. Then these are going to be things like UHT milk, paneer. So these have become tax free, which is wonderful. Yeah, most of it will come under the zero exemption shaggy. Like the milk and the paneer, the dairy products both have been exempted here. But talking about the 5% merit list, basic consumer goods like shampoos, oils, soap, and all of that. Then come the rate cuts. For example, there are packaged noodles, there are packaged fast food products, chips, chocolates. cold drinks, beverages. On them also, the rate of tax has been reduced. So the GST has come down on these ready-to-eat items also. Talking about insurance, now the great news today stands out is that in the insurance segment, if we see, so with the insurance, the government has completely exempted all life insurance, all health insurance products. This will lead to two benefits. One, it will lead to more adoption of India insurance policy among the poor people, middle class. Second, it will also help in creating more social security for people. It will reduce the out of pocket expenditure of Indians who usually spend a lot on primary and secondary health. Because normally insurance doesn't cover primary and secondary health care. Only the tertiary is covered under most private insurance. Tertiary is surgery and inpatient procedure. Consultation and specialist consultation are not covered. But with this complete duty-free health and life insurance, many more people will adopt it now because there is no GST on it. Another thing is that GST has also been exempted on certain essential medicines, supplements, and drugs. For example, the treatment of cancer, it has become now acutely GST free or very minimal rate of GST in advanced medications, which will also enable us more testing and more preventive care. Talking about agriculture, tractors, farm machines, all of them are coming under the 5% slab structure. So that is again a huge help for medium farmers. Tractors, other farm machines, all of these will also come under the 5% merit tax. Now coming up to textiles. Textile also, whether it's man-made or whether it's your fiber, yarn, all of them will also come under 5% merit tax. Talking about cement, from 28% to 18%. 28% to 18%, the GST for cement. What does that lead to? A much better affordable housing policy by people. Now, the new GST reform has also introduced one more thing, and this is going to be the creation of a new GST appellate tribunal. GSTAT. This is the new proposition, and people are saying by the end of 2025, the policy says it will be in place. What's the purpose of this new GSTAT? The new GST appellate tribunal. The purpose is to solve disputes on a fast track mechanism, also keep a consistency in jurisdictions across India. So this is a great news here. That's what the article says. Across India, the households are quite happy, particularly because there has been a complete exemption on certain food items. As I said, chapatis, paranthas, paneer, your UHT milk, hugely exempted. Similarly, things like soap, shampoo, bicycle, kitchen equipment, kitchen utensils, all of them 5%. Tractor, farm, machines, all of them 5%. Huge rate reduction for other important items like your drugs. Drugs have been given a huge exemption. Across cement and agriculture goods also a reduction, and they have been reduced from 28 to 18%. So you see, it is overall one such critical move that the Indian government has today taken for two reasons. One reason, of course, is to make GST compliance easier for people. Second reason, of course, is the tariff shock that we are experiencing. With the festival season round the corner, maximum domestic sales is expected during these months from September to December. This is the festival month for India for most communities. In this, if the consumers had to face a higher GST, what happens? Their purchasing power would have gone down. In general, it would have led to a slow economic demand. But that the government has taken care of with people getting more liquidity, more purchasing power now with easy GST. What happens? Of course, your spending will be higher. You will be able to enjoy the benefits of festive season sale. And that enables domestic consumption, domestic demand. And that's exactly what we need to do because we are facing a shock in terms of the tariff structure abroad. So that's the article for you. And look at the question. Yeah. So one more thing before I give you the question. How will this help us, this new GST tax structure? So there are two issues here. One is economic benefit and the other is governance benefit. So for your GS paper answer, GS paper 3, please understand that for economic benefit in terms of economic advantage, yes, as I said, it will give a better consumption advantage. It will reduce the tax dispute, tax evasion, compliance problems. Third, it will also make Indian goods more competitive, if the total price of these goods is reduced, which means they can be better priced in foreign markets. Plus, some of the goods that were reserved for exports can also be released back into the domestic market. With lesser GST, people will buy them. So, exporters in sectors like textile, garments, gems and jewelry, electronics will face a lesser loss, because earlier they were getting a big shock because of the US Trump policy. Now, governance wise, also, it is making simple. The work of the government becomes simple. Earlier, GST was very complicated. So, naturally, even the computers, the tax collectors were having a hard time. But today, now it has enhanced the ease of doing business. Entrepreneurs will be happy, lesser compliance burden, and the tax collectors and the computers will also be happy. The people who are behind investigating these issues will also be happy, because now it is also promoting cooperative federalism, division of power between center and states. Now, today, the new GST Council will act as a joint decision making body. The new body we are talking about, the GSTAT, Appellate Tribunal, this will act as a complete last one end decision maker. So, it kind of helps in too much disputes between center and states. And at least it will be quite easy to comply. It will be, the government is making sure that it's implemented step by step until 22nd September 2025. So this news will again come on 22nd September, the Hindu, and that day we will see what is the benefit and sentiment among people. So now this GST second wave reform is therefore being called as not just a technical adjustment, but it's a people's reform. Why is it a people's reforms? Because it is touching the life of the man on the road, the common man. When he or she can get exemption from basic necessities, that's the wonderful thing that has happened today. And India, therefore, is also trying to achieve now its vision of $10 trillion economy in line with the Viksit Bharat mission of 2047. So quite a feel-good article, I think. And yeah, so all these have been clarified, Shaggy. Absolutely, what you're talking about. That is the entertainment tickets, hospitality sector. So across all these segments, they have reduced the GST. So perhaps they have been brought down from 18 to 5% now. So for the consumer, you have to pay lesser tax. So anyway, it's a good news. It might lead, Pavan. Good morning, Pavan. That's a valid question that you're raising. It might lead, but it's a very short term solution that we are looking at right now, because as the festival season was coming, India was expecting huge domestic sales. But owing to the tariff policy, that could have been completely wiped out. And that would have led to a bigger problem. If you would experience an inflation, then that could be very difficult during the festive season itself. So, whether it's about RBI pushing in more liquidity through lesser cash reserve ratio, reduced repo rate, whether it's Indian government retweaking its GST scheme, the only purpose is to just boost liquidity in the system. And right now, it will not exactly lead to demand pull inflation, because we already have a lot of surplus. Please understand that when the US markets close suddenly, then there is too much export surplus also that is there with our companies. So where will that go? Suddenly it's difficult to find new markets and keep dumping them across South Asia or UK. So a better strategy would be to actually divert them for internal consumption. So that way it will not exactly right now lead to demand pull. We'll see in future how it goes. Okay, a very good morning, Adit. Okay, yes, and a very happy Onam to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So the question is, with reference to the decisions on 56 GST Council meeting, look at the following statements. One, the new two-rate GST structure adopted with 5% merit, 40% demerit and standard rate of 18% has been created today. And two, all life and health insurance products have been exempted from GST to improve affordability and penetration. 3. Cement and man-made fiber is now attracting a reduced GST of 5% to remove inverted duty structures. Which of these statements is or are valid? I think it's a very direct, easy question for those who've understood the article. You can try to solve it. Yes, the 56th meeting. That's valid point. Absolutely, yes, yes. So now the next article is page number 10. Now, there is a small disclaimer before I take up this article, that this is not a current affair article. It is not exactly a news article. This has come from page 10 as a text article, and it is just trying to investigate the relationship between India and China, starting from 1960 onwards until 2025. It's a quick timeline of relationships between the two countries, and the purpose is to examine that today, as India and China are meeting once again in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and India, China, and Russia is the new trio that has emerged in the form of Tianjin Declaration. What is the real history of India China? And can we trust China again after the shocks that China has given us in the past? I really wouldn't want to take much time of yours in this article, but since it's there and it's quite an important one from the perspective of internal security and from the perspective of international relations GS paper 2, I'll just give you a quick brief outline of the article. Think again, my dear. For the previous question, what is the answer? There is some confusion, it looks like. Are you sure it's D? Think again. Okay. So now for this article, let me quickly draw in 5 minutes the brief sketch and then we proceed with today's important news. So this article is just talking about how India, China were two such countries which never got an opportunity to decide mutually what is the exact line of control. We could blame the British for that because India-China border was never officially demarcated. The reason is that it is situated in a very difficult geographical area up in the Himalaya mountain. And going there and stationing army there was a very difficult challenge until the last few decades. So this border also passes through certain such areas which are completely vacuum. Nobody lives there. They are uninhabited except for some tribals. Now, what happens? The decision on what is the border was essentially taken by two sources. One was the British, who used maps and they did not bother to do any ground measurement. It was very vague and not scientific. Second was the Manchu China regime, who wanted to actually capture the Tibet area, and they committed thousands of atrocities on Tibet because China wanted control over Tibet. Today, also, we call it the TAR, Tibet Autonomous Region, but essentially under China. So, therefore, they did not want to lose control over Tibet. So, they were the ones who also redefined the boundary. But after independence, while the British kept on saying that our map is final and the line of control between India and China, it is one single line decided by the British itself. But China never believed that. China never agreed to that. So both areas of the border were always under conflict. One was the Aksai Chin and the other was the Tawang region in modern Arunachal Pradesh. Tawang is known as being the largest Buddhist monastery, perhaps in the world. And earlier it was a part of NEFA, Northeastern Frontier Agency. Today it is called Arunachal Pradesh. So both areas were constantly in a war about that. So what was the exact border? Who will define the McMahon line? Was the real confusion. And now the problem was that when we talk about Aksai Chin, then Aksai Chin is a very, very high altitude cold desert. It's a complete snowy area. India says it belongs to me, but China says that no, this acts as the link between the largest Chinese province of Xinjiang and Tibet. So we cannot give it to India. Similarly, China has already multiple times made a strong highway passing through Aksai Chin right from 1950s, and India kept on protesting. Then, much later, talking about Arunachal Pradesh, the monastery that I was talking about, the Tawang monastery, China claims that. China says that based on the McMahon line that was decided in 1914 by the British, the McMahon line should also make sure that Tibet completely goes to China and some parts of Arunachal Pradesh also. Again, something that Indian government is not ready to believe. So this conflict kept on happening. It just kept on increasing until 1959. China finally proposed the line of actual control and said that both countries, India and China, will withdraw 20 kilometers from either side so that we leave that area completely undisputed. But in 1960, the Chinese leader proposed what is called as the swap deal. Swap deal means you take something, give me something, almost like a barter. Here, India accepted that, okay, Aksai Chin in the west will go to China. So under Nehruvian regime, we gave off Aksai Chin to China. Some people are today calling it a big geopolitical mistake, a failure of foreign policy. whatever, but that happened. And China accepted that, okay, Arunachal Pradesh will go to India. Fine, that was 1960. But then unexpectedly, once again, China broke its own agreement and just started entering the Arunachal Pradesh area, the NEFA. It completely broke the respect of the McMahon line, and not only just entered, but also China penetrated as far as the southern Assam region. Now, because of this, naturally, the 1962 China India War broke out. Both the countries were helpless. Both the countries did not do anything to finalize the decision for at least 15 years. And then another incident happened. Back in 1954, the Nehru government had also signed an agreement called the Panchsheel Agreement with China. Under the agreement, both countries will become good friends and they will respect the mutual borders. Again, it was not respected because much after Panchsheel, 1962, China attacked India. At that point of time, there was a defense minister in India named as V.K. Menon. He used to work in Jawaharlal Nehru's cabinet secretariat. He resigned from his job. It was seen as an out and out failure of foreign policy, an out and out failure of Indian military. India was still using Second World War equipments in the war. The soldiers had nothing to fight with in such a cold territory. And then suddenly, China itself, after penetrating India, after trying to capture the Nefa, capturing Tawang, came as far as Assam foothills. But then, after a few weeks, automatically China declared a unilateral ceasefire. But for India, it was a great eye opener. Till date, although India on paper has every right on Arunachal, it's a part of our map, but China still continues to claim some parts of Arunachal as southern Tibet. So that's the conflict that has still continued until date. And in between, there were many problems that kept happening. For example, in 1961, the problem about Nathula Pass, Sikkim. Who owns that, China or India? China was making incursions there. Similarly, 1975, Sikkim was created as an Indian state, and when it was incorporated in India formally in Indian Union, China was very upset about it. Then also Dalai Lama, the very famous Buddhist monk, as he came to India, fleeing from Tibet and sought refuge in India. That also angered China. China felt that India is nothing but betraying China's interests. So the problem kept on happening. Long back in 1987, India had also launched Operation Falcon to protect Arunachal territory. But the problems between both the countries kept continuing until 2020. We had the Galwan Valley attack, when once again China created some infrastructure on the border and Chinese troops penetrated into Indian territory quite inside. So that was the Galwan Valley clash. Now, interestingly, this time in 2025, as the SCO summit is happening, both countries, after a gap of 5 years, have met again. People say it is because India is frustrated with US. That's why it's trying to rebuild the faith in Chinese relationship. But for Indian government, it is just about finding better trade deals and making sure that India acts in terms of its Act East policy. India cannot neglect the threat of China in the Indian Ocean region as well as the South China region. Okay, so these are two realities. Now, also in the 1980s, the world geopolitics had once again changed. The Soviet Union became completely weak, and 1991 it completely broke off into different countries and Russia took birth. Then again, Russia, US were completely enemy blocs. At that point of time, India was also not sure whether to support one or another. Hence, India took up non-alignment, no supporting anybody, equal from both sides, balanced. But China also felt that with Soviet Union weakening and US power increasing, China was also a little insecure. So that time, China had invited Rajiv Gandhi in its country, and both of them had worked towards creating better mutual understanding. But since then to today, we know that China could be a good trade partner. It's important for India to keep some good relationship there because it will help India to also take care of Chinese aggression. But whether China is a trusted partner, that we cannot say. The history timeline, whether it's the timeline from 1962 war, whether it's the timeline that dates back to Galwan Valley, China's claim in Nefa, till date China's problems regarding the actual LOC, the line of control, we know that China is not exactly somebody whom we can blindly trust upon. So therefore, today India's situation is quite like what it was during Rajiv Gandhi time. Manage the dispute, don't solve it immediately. That's exactly what China has also said. China has clearly told our Prime Minister Shri Modi in the SCO summit that although there is a border dispute between us, but let that not become an obstacle in our better trade relationship, people to people relationship, and cultural sharing. India, a little cautious but still believes the same. What Rajiv Gandhi used to believe is something same that's happening right now. Let's leave the main war for now. Let's try to manage it. Immediate solution will maybe not work for us. It will further create problems itself. So that's a brief look the article has given us. And the question based on that is with reference to India-China border dispute, some statements are there. One, the McMahon line that was drawn in 1914 demarcates the boundary between India and China in the western Ladakh. Second, in 1960, Chinese leader Zhou Enlai proposed a swap deal, an exchange deal where India would accept China's claim over Aksai and India would get Arunachal. And three is that the actual line of control was first suggested by China in 1959 as the practical boundary between the countries. Which of these statements do you think is or are valid? There is some confusion with the last question's answer also, but then all these answers you'll find at the end of the session. Okay. So now we'll proceed with shorter articles. So this article is quite interesting and this is nothing new, something we keep talking about almost every day, that India's birth rate has fallen down further. It has been for the first time in the last 2 years that our total fertility rate has fallen down. It has fallen down. So let me quickly break down the concepts. This is GS paper 1, social issues, demography, population. Well, that's the valid answer. Very good, everyone. Okay, that's wonderful. Pavan, Shaggy, Dhanu, absolutely correct. That's a valid one. Okay, now to this article. In the last 2 years, for the first time, total fertility rate has fallen down. What is total fertility rate? A key concept in demography, population studies, social issue in India. Total fertility rate is the number of children that are born to a woman, that can be born to a woman during her reproductive lifespan from 15 to 49 years of age. It shows the demographic change and curve in a country. Talking about the whole world, total fertility rate of 2.1 is perfect. Therefore, 2.1 fertility rate, 2.1 TFR is also known as replacement level fertility, RLF. Because it is believed that at a rate of 2.1 fertility, a generation will replicate itself without the need for any population control. And the population control will become absolutely stable if a country is to achieve 2.1 TFR, called as replacement level fertility rate. Today, majority countries in the world, including China because of one child policy for so many years, Russia, Japan, South Korea, Canada, all these countries are experiencing a very low total fertility rate. It is much below the expected RLF of 2.1. It has fallen down about 1.3%. In countries like South Korea and Japan, it is in minus already. It's negative. India is a unique picture. For certain North Indian states like Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh, the TFR is still quite above the average of 2.1. It happens to be 2.3 to 2.4. Therefore, there is a higher fertility, a higher younger population. But in southern Indian states, including Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra, Telangana, Lakshadweep, it has fallen down quite low, touching about 1.6%. Okay, now Nagaland and Mizoram witnessed almost a negative fertility rate in the census of 2011. So India is a diverse picture there. But at the same time, as all these other countries who are falling below 1.3 are becoming old countries with lesser children being born, old population is dominating. That becomes a grey economy, an economy dominated by senior citizens above 60. In India, luckily, because of some states which have a higher TFR, above 2.1 average, we are still a young country. As I said, average age of an Indian is about 28 years. And we will continue to have this young population, demographic dividend we call it, until 2025 as per United Nations. But today, for the first time, the news says India's crude birth rate has fallen down for the first time, which means the number of children born, the number of children who are taking birth per 1,000 people has declined 0.7 points from 2022 to 2023, which means in 2022 it was 19.1. In 2022 it was 19.1. What? The crude birth rate. Number of people born, number of children being born per 1,000 people in the country. In 2023, it has fallen to about 18.4%. It's a loss of more than 1%. So, if the TFR continues to fall, what are the repercussions for the country? One, the country will become an old population. Two, the country will experience a lesser demographic dividend, which means the dependency ratio of population increases, the working population declines. The demand for Indian labor and Indian human resource and foreign markets also comes down. So therefore, we have to utilize our demographic dividend before it becomes a demographic disaster or a wastage. According to the article, the total fertility rate, the TFR, is quite higher than average 2.1, that's RLF, in states like Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh. And the ones that are experiencing lowest TFR are West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and Delhi. Okay, so this is the situation in India right now. This is what the article said. Now, the next article is about Nepal. Nepal was in news 10 years before. Sorry, 10 days before. Nepal was in news 10 days before when I told you that how because of India and China trying to open up the Lipu Lake Pass in Uttarakhand, Nathula Pass in Sikkim, and Shipkila Pass in Himachal for better trade between them, Nepal is objecting because Nepal says Lipu Lake Pass of Uttarakhand belongs to me. It belongs to the Kali Lampiadhura area that comes under Nepali territory as per Nepal. Nepal has also created a map which shows Lipu Lake Pass in Nepal's region. India is not okay with this. That was when Nepal was in news. Today, once again, Nepal is making news. This time for its strict policy on social media. Now, in Nepal, what has happened? The KP Sharma Oli, the leader of Nepali government, has decided to ban 26 social media platforms, including Facebook, X, earlier Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Why? Because Nepal is saying all these social media platforms have failed to register themselves, which is a key requirement of Nepali law. All these international forums have to register themselves and after a certain period again re-register, and they have failed to do it. Deadline has passed and we cannot take this lightly, so therefore they have decided to put a complete blanket ban on them. So while other countries like China, Russia, they often keep doing these things, but nobody has ever put a blanket ban on these platforms. But today, Nepal has done a complete ban, that too across 26 social media platforms, because they failed to register under the new law that is required in Nepal. Nepal says all these platforms, if they want to operate from our land, have to do a compulsory social media registration with our telecom authority. If you fail to register and deadline passes, no monetary fine. Complete blanket ban. Registration. Now, registration is a condition that Nepal says is very important, because only registration can make sure that social media platforms are not putting an inflammable content on Nepal. Only that can make sure that Nepal monitors that social media platforms are not putting any harmful posts that is dangerous for the country. But according to the owners and regulators of these social media platforms, they are saying it's a very, very short sighted move. In 2025, a country putting a blanket ban is unacceptable. It is completely devastating the right to free speech and expression. It's very undemocratic. They also say that this ban on all these media platforms is just like what Nepal had done in 2023, a ban on TikTok. People were unhappy. A lot of people get their incomes from here, influencers, content makers. So they are quite unhappy with this move. The government is saying that if we do not continue to control and monitor social media platforms, then what happens? It leads to fake news, cyber crimes, financial frauds, money laundering, and a lot of communal conflict. That's why we need to do it. They also say that global tech companies, no matter how big they are, they have to respect Nepali internal law. And Nepal has every right to regulate its foreign policy regarding social media conduct. It is a right of digital sovereignty. But people are saying it is an attempt to stop any disagreement or dissent against the government. It not only disturbs the life of ordinary citizens, but it also impacts the life of journalists. The right to free speech and expression that Nepali constitution guarantees in the form of Article 17. That free speech is a fundamental right, except in cases of when it is crossing reasonable limits. So today, Nepalis feel that it is a completely snatching of their fundamental right, and it's a very intrusive policy by the government. Question: with reference to Nepal's decision to shut down its social media platforms, look at the following statements. One, the government had earlier set a deadline of 7 days for social media platforms to register, but that expired. Two, Nepal had never before this banned any social media platform. And three, free speech is about free speech supporters, free speech advocates are arguing that this is not just about a ban. It is about trying to stop any dissent against the government. So which of these options are valid? I think it's a very easy question. Four goals you need to pick up from. Okay. With this, one of the last articles for the day, quickly, the central government has signed a peace agreement with Manipur. In Manipur, since the last 2 years, there has been an ongoing tribal insurgency, a communal conflict between two groups of tribals, the Kuki, Zo, and the Mighty tribals. Both these are fighting over one, clash of interest, two, the fact that one was being given scheduled tribe status, which was not acceptable by the other tribal group. And this created irreversible conflicts, killings, genocides, harassments of all the kinds. After these many years, the government is trying to negotiate a peace deal here. So, what is happening? Oh, very well answered. Yes, Pavan, absolutely yes, Dhanu. That's valid. That's great, actually. Okay, now the key issue here is that we know since the last 2 years, massive ethnic conflict has been going on in the Imphal Valley. That's Manipur. Why? Because the Metis community, that is the dominant community in the state, was demanding a scheduled tribe status. Now, why should a community demand a scheduled tribe status? Because you know that as per the Constitutional Order 1950, in India, scheduled tribes are entitled to an all India reservation of 7.5%. Okay, and as of now, as per 2011 census, we have 8.6% people who can be called as scheduled tribes. Being recognized as a scheduled tribe means constitution gives you some reservation benefits. And yes, because Metis is a dominant community here, they wanted an ST status. But this was not okay with the opposite group, Kukizo. People say that Kukizo is a tribe that has been responsible for insurgency, attacks in the region of Manipur. And therefore, they are not happy with Metis getting the ST status. It led to, we all have seen the news, how disturbing that was. Women harassment, sexual harassments, killings, shootings, all of that has happened. Refugees from Myanmar, because please believe this is an ethnically shared area. A lot of Kuki-Zo community members you will find in Myanmar also. Kuki-Chin area of Myanmar. You must have heard that in news. Kuki-Chin. They have a shared history. All these are similar tribals. They spread across India, Bangladesh, Myanmar. So a lot of refugees came there in Manipur while this was happening. Now the violence, as we have seen, it led to so many armed attacks. Multiple Kuki-Zo armed groups were in the fight until the government signed in 2008 some agreement with them. And the government said that they need to suspend their violence. They need to stop the violence. In return, the government will negotiate with them. But that did not happen. No proper ceasefire happened. It was very temporary and no peace accord could take place. Today, once again, the government is trying to create another agreement. This the government wants to be a peace accord. The government is telling these insurgents of Kukizo community that please stop doing these violence acts. We will put you in designated camps that are meant for refugees. Security forces will take care of you, but you have to give up your arms in return. The government says, please stop your military operation. Let us have your dangerous arms and ammunition. In return, you will be given a place, and slowly, slowly, we will negotiate about your settlement in the area. While some tribal groups are okay with it, some are not. The violence continues. Today, the new pact that government is trying to create with them, the SOO 2025, that is being spoken about, is all about making sure that only those people who are valid insurgents are kept in these camps. If there are illegal immigrants into India from Myanmar and Bangladesh, they have to go out. The government will not do anything for them. Similarly, many Kukizo communities also have link with the, as I said, Kuki Chin groups that are in Myanmar. So those foreigners will be deported. They will not be put in the camps. Why should the government negotiate with them? They are illegal immigrants. Similarly, the government is saying that let's try to arrange for territorial integrity of Manipur. Now, we all know Article 1 of the Indian Constitution. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. While the states are destructible, they can be changed and altered. Central government sovereignty cannot be questioned. Same thing is being repeated here in the new agenda and the pact that yes, Manipur's integration can be made smoother with India, but definitely we cannot give a separate administration to the Kuki groups. That is a demand of secessionism, separatism, quite like the Khalistani and the Bodo land and the KLO demand, the Kamtapur Liberation Organization demand that the government will not tolerate. And then neutral locations will be found to relocate the people who are doing the insurgency so that ethnic tensions can be reduced. So that's something that is making news. And now the another quick read is how the Supreme Court of India is worried that how in the states like Himachal, Uttarakhand and Sikkim, every now and then flash floods are happening, cloud bursts are happening. Because of that, volumes of water just comes pouring in a given location within a short span of time. And this is leading to complete trees getting eroded and flowing with the water. Supreme Court is quite shocked at the images where huge trees, logs of wood have been seen floating in the water. It's happening not just in Himachal, Uttarakhand, but also Sikkim, Jammu Kashmir and areas of Punjab. So the government said that no development of economic kind that leads to devastation of ecology will be tolerated. So the Supreme Court has asked the central government to once again relook at all its development and infrastructural projects and stop immediately those which are causing human life loss. So we need to make sure we respect the Forest Conservation Act 1980. We cannot use forest and cut them down for commercial purposes without reason. We have to make sure that if we are cutting down forest, we have to also plant new trees there. Afforestation, compensatory afforestation funds 2016. Then Supreme Court's landmark judgments previously. The T.N. Godavarman case 1996, where Supreme Court said that the definition of forest means a complete restriction on cutting the trees for commercial purpose. Similarly, 2011, the Lafarage Umiam mining case, where Supreme Court said no mining, no construction, no commercial activity should harm sustainable development. But currently, we are seeing a gap of enforcement in the Himalayan regions, and the government has called out to that. Now, the last article for the day is International Relations GS Paper 2, India Singapore. We know that right now, our Prime Minister Shri Modi is meeting the Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Both of them have committed to expanding mutual trade, free trade agreements, as well as much better trading in semiconductor industry. Okay. Now here there is one more development that has taken place. Now this might come next year prelims as places in the news, because the place in the news in the article is the Strait of Malacca. Now Strait of Malacca is that key corridor you can see that is passing between Indonesia and the Malaysian archipelago. So now both the governments are saying that we should try to protect the Strait of Malacca in a big way. In fact, Singaporean leader has supported the argument of India that India will do everything to provide safety security of Strait of Malacca, because India wants better patrolling and monitoring of this area. given the fact that majority of green energy exports and imports between India and Sri Lanka happen through this area, this narrow stretch. Then they also said that across defense, nuclear, technology, shipping, and water management, blue economy, this Strait of Malacca protection becomes the key agenda. Why do we need to protect it, and why is Strait of Malacca important? Extremely important question, GS paper 2 and 3. It's a geographical choke point. It connects the Indian Ocean with Pacific Ocean through the South China Sea. Now, South China Sea is an area that China dominates. Second, it is one of the world's busiest sea lane. One third of global trade, 80% of China's all imports pass. Today, the safety and security of island is a joint venture between Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. India also wants to contribute to patrolling safety and security. India will be a net security provider. India will also try to conduct submarine rescue operations in this region. The whole purpose is to boost India's impact in the Indian Ocean region, in the Indo-Pacific region, and to protect these regions, including South China Sea, from overt Chinese domination. It's quite in line with India's Act East policy. That's all for the day. These are the answers. Thank you so much for being with me and this lovely interaction here. Okay. Yes, absolutely well said, Rishi. Well said, Dhanu, Pavan. Okay, absolutely. We can do that. The Manipur detailed video. Yes, Shaggy, we can do that. Okay. Disaster management. Fine. You need to know more about disaster management. Yes, we can talk about it. Okay, done. On Manipur violence and disaster management. Yes, we can do that. Thank you so much, Pavan, for your warm and kind wishes. Everyone here, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fresh session of the Hindu news.